Chapter 7 of Different Girls. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kate Follis. Different Girls, Harper's Novelettes. Editha by William Dean Howells. The air was thick with the war-won feeling, like the electricity of a storm which has not yet burst. Editha sat looking out into the hot spring afternoon, with her lips parted and panting with the intensity of the question whether she could let him go. She had decided that she could not let him stay when she saw him at the end of the still, leafless avenue, making slowly up toward the house, with his head down and his figure relaxed. She ran impatiently out on the veranda to the edge of the steps and imperatively demanded greater haste of him with her will before she called aloud to him, "George!" He had quickened his pace in mystical response to her mystical urgence before he could have heard her. Now he looked up and answered, "Well?" "Oh, how united we are!" she exulted, and then she swooped down the steps to him. "What is it?" she cried. "It's war," he said, and he pulled her up to him and kissed her. She kissed him back intensely, but irrelevantly, as to their passion, and uttered from deep in her throat, "How glorious!" "It's war," he repeated, without consenting to her sense of it, and she did not know just what to think at first. She never knew what to think of him. That made his mystery, his charm. All through their courtship, which was contemporaneous with the growth of the war feeling, she had been puzzled by his want of seriousness about it. He seemed to despise it even more than he abhorred it. She could have understood his abhorring any sort of bloodshed. That would have been a survival of his old life when he thought he would be a minister, and before he changed and took up the law. But making light of a cause so high and noble seemed to show a want of earnestness at the core of his being. Not but that she felt herself able to cope with a congenital defect of that sort, and make his love for her save him from himself. Now perhaps the miracle was already wrought in him. In the presence of the tremendous fact that he announced, all trivialities seemed to have gone out of him. She began to feel that. He sank down on the top step and wiped his forehead with his handkerchief, while she poured out upon him her question of the origin and authenticity of his news. All the while, in her duplex emotioning, she was aware that now, at the very beginning, she must put a guard upon herself against urging him, by any word or act, to take the part that her whole soul willed him to take for the completion of her ideal of him. He was very nearly perfect as he was, and he must be allowed to perfect himself. But he was peculiar, and he might very well be reasoned out of his peculiarity. Before her reasoning went her emotioning, her nature pulling upon his nature, her womanhood upon his manhood, without her knowing the means she was using to the end she was willing. She had always supposed that the man who won her would have done something to win her. She did not know what, but something. George Gerson had simply asked her for her love on the way home from a concert, and she gave her love to him, without, as it were, thinking. But now it flashed upon her. If he could do something worthy to have won her, be a hero, her hero, it would be even better than if he had done it before asking her. It would be grander. Besides, she had believed in the war from the beginning. "But don't you see, dearest," she said, "that it wouldn't have come to this if it hadn't been in the order of Providence, and I call any war glorious that is for the liberation of people who have been struggling for years against the cruelest oppression. Don't you think so, too?" "I suppose so," he returned languidly. "But war! Is it glorious to break the peace of the world?" "That ignoble peace! It was no peace at all with that crime and shame at our very gates." She was conscious of parroting the current phrases of the newspapers, but it was no time to pick and choose her words. She must sacrifice anything to the high ideal she had for him, and after a good deal of rapid argument she ended with the climax. "But now it doesn't matter about the how or why. Since the war has come, all that is gone. There are no two sides any more. There is nothing now but our country." He sat with his eyes closed and his head leaned back against the veranda, and he said with a vague smile, as if musing aloud, "Our country, right or wrong." "Yes, right or wrong," she returned fervidly. "I'll go and get you some lemonade." She rose, rustling, and whisked away. When she came back with 2 tall glasses of clouded liquid on a tray and the ice clucking in them, he still sat as she had left him, and she said as if there had been no interruption, "But there is no question of wrong in this case. I call it a sacred war, a war for liberty and humanity, if ever there was one, and I know you will see it just as I do yet." He took half the lemonade at a gulp, and he answered as he set the glass down, "I know you always have the highest ideal. When I differ from you, I ought to doubt myself." A generous sob rose in Editha's throat for the humility of a man so very nearly perfect, who was willing to put himself below her. Besides, she felt that he was never so near slipping through her fingers as when he took that meek way. "You shall not say that. Only for once I happen to be right." She seized his hand in her 2 hands and poured her soul from her eyes into his. "Don't you think so?" she entreated him. He released his hand and drank the rest of his lemonade, and she added, "Have mine too," but he shook his head in answering, "I've no business to think so, unless I act so too." Her heart stopped a beat before it posted on with leaps that she felt in her neck. She had noticed that strange thing in men. They seemed to feel bound to do what they believed, and not think a thing was finished when they said it, as girls did. She knew what was in his mind, but she pretended not, and she said, "Oh, I'm not sure." He went on as if to himself, without apparently heeding her. "There's only one way of proving one's faith in a thing like this." She could not say that she understood, but she did understand. He went on again. "If I believed, if I felt as you do about this war, do you wish me to feel as you do?" Now she was really not sure, so she said, "George, I don't know what you mean." He seemed to muse away from her as before. "There is a sort of fascination in it. I suppose that at the bottom of his heart every man would like at times to have his courage tested, to see how he would act." "How can you talk in that ghastly way?" "It is rather morbid. Still, that's what it comes to. Unless you're swept away by ambition, or driven by conviction. I haven't the conviction or the ambition, and the other thing is what it comes to with me. I ought to have been a preacher after all. Then I couldn't have asked it of myself, as I must, now I'm a lawyer. And you believe it's a holy war, Editha?" He suddenly addressed her. "Or I know you do, but you wish me to believe so too." She hardly knew whether he was mocking or not, in the ironical way he always had with her plainer mind, but the only thing was to be outspoken with him. "George, I wish you to believe whatever you think is true, at any and every cost. If I've tried to talk you into anything, I take it all back." Oh, I know that, Editha. I know how sincere you are, and how I wish I had your undoubting spirit. I'll think it over. I'd like to believe as you do, but I don't now. I don't indeed. It isn't this war alone, though this seems peculiarly wanton and needless. But it's every war. So stupid. It makes me sick. Why shouldn't this thing have been settled reasonably? Because, she said, very throatily again, God meant it to be a war. You think it was God? Yes, I suppose that is what people will say. Do you suppose it would have been war if God hadn't meant it? I don't know. Sometimes it seems as if God had put this world into men's keeping to work it as they pleased. Now, George, that is blasphemy. Well, I won't blaspheme. I'll try to believe in your pocket providence, he said, and then he rose to go. Why don't you stay to dinner? Dinner at Balcom's Works was at 1 o'clock. I'll come back to supper, if you'll let me. Perhaps I shall bring you a convert. Well, you may come back on that condition. All right. If I don't come, you'll understand? He went away without kissing her, and she felt it a suspension of their engagement. It all interested her intensely. She was undergoing a tremendous experience, and she was being equal to it. While she stood looking after him, her mother came out through one of the long windows on to the veranda with a cat-like softness and vagueness. Why didn't he stay to dinner? Because war has been declared, Editha pronounced, without turning. Her mother said, "Oh, my!" and then said nothing more until she had sat down in one of the large Shaker chairs and rocked herself for some time. Then she closed whatever tacit passage of thought there had been in her mind with the spoken words, "Well, I hope he won't go." "And I hope he will," the girl said, and confronted her mother with a stormy exaltation that would have frightened any creature less unimpressionable than a cat. Her mother rocked herself again for an interval of cogitation. What she arrived at in speech was, "Well, I guess you've done a wicked thing, Editha Balcom." The girl said, as she passed indoors through the same window her mother had come out by, "I haven't done anything yet." In her room she put together all her letters and gifts from Gearson, down to the withered petals of the first flower he had offered, with that timidity of his, veiled in that irony of his. In the heart of the packet she enshrined her engagement ring, which she had restored to the pretty box he had brought it her in. Then she sat down, if not calmly yet strongly, and wrote. "George, I understood when you left me, but I think we had better emphasize your meaning that if we cannot be one in everything, we had better be one in nothing. So I am sending these things for your keeping till you have made up your mind. I shall always love you, and therefore I shall never marry anyone else. But the man I marry must love his country first of all, and be able to say to me, 'I could not love thee, dear, so much. Loved I not honour more.' There is no honour above America with me. In this great hour there is no other honour. Your heart will make my words clear to you. I had never expected to say so much, but it has come upon me that I must say the utmost. Editha." She thought she had worded her letter well, worded it in a way that could not be bettered. All had been implied and nothing expressed. She had it ready to send with the packet she had tied with red, white, and blue ribbon, when it occurred to her that she was not just to him, that she was not giving him a fair chance. He had said he would go and think it over, and she was not waiting. She was pushing, threatening, compelling. That was not a woman's part. She must leave him free, free, free. She could not accept for her country or herself a forced sacrifice. In writing her letter she had satisfied the impulse from which it sprang. She could well afford to wait till he had thought it over. She put the packet and the letter by, and rested serene in the consciousness of having done what was laid upon her by her love itself to do, and yet used patience, mercy, justice. She had her reward. Gearson did not come to tea, but she had given him till morning, when, late at night, there came up from the village the sound of a fife and drum, with a tumult of voices, and shouting, singing, and laughing. The noise drew nearer and nearer. It reached the street end of the avenue. There it silenced itself, and one voice, the voice she knew best, rose over the silence. It fell. The air was filled with cheers. The fife and drum struck up with the shouting, singing, and laughing again, but now retreating, and a single figure came hurrying up the avenue. She ran down to meet her lover and clung to him. He was very gay, and he put his arm round her with a boisterous laugh. "Well, you must call me Captain now, or Cap if you prefer. That's what the boys call me. Yes, we've had a meeting at the town hall, and everybody has volunteered, and they selected me for captain, and I'm going to the war, the big war, the glorious war, the holy war, ordained by the pocket providence that blesses butchery. Come along, let's tell the whole family about it. Call them from their downy beds, father, mother, Aunt Hitty, and all the folks." But when they mounted the veranda steps, he did not wait for a larger audience. He poured the story out upon Editha alone. There was a lot of speaking, and then some of the fools set up a shout for me. It was all going one way, and I thought it would be a good joke to sprinkle a little cold water on them. But you can't do that with a crowd that adores you. The first thing I knew I was sprinkling hellfire on them. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. That was the style. Now that it had come to the fight, there were no two parties. There was one country, and the thing was to fight the fight to a finish as quick as possible. I suggested volunteering then and there, and I wrote my name first of all on the roster. Then they elected me. That's all. I wish I had some ice water." She left him walking up and down the veranda while she ran for the ice pitcher and goblet, and when she came back he was still walking up and down, shouting the story he had told her to her father and mother, who had come out more sketchily dressed than they commonly were by day. He drank goblet after goblet of the ice water without noticing who was giving it, and kept on talking and laughing through his talk wildly. "It's astonishing," he said, "how well the worse reason looks when you try to make it appear the better. Why, I believe I was the first convert to the war in that crowd tonight. I never thought I should like to kill a man, but now I shouldn't care. And the smokeless powder lets you see the man drop that you kill. It's all for the country. What a thing it is to have a country that can't be wrong. But if it is right anyway." Editha had a great, vital thought, an inspiration. She set down the ice pitcher on the veranda floor and ran upstairs and got the letter she had written him. When at last he noisily bade her father and mother, "Well, good night. I forgot I woke you up. I shan't want any sleep myself," she followed him down the avenue to the gate. There, after the whirling words that seemed to fly away from her thoughts and refuse to serve them, she made a last effort to solemnize the moment that seemed so crazy, and pressed the letter she had written upon him. "What's this?" he said. "Want me to mail it?" "No, no, it's for you. I wrote it after you went this morning. Keep it, and read it sometime." She thought, and then her inspiration came. Read it if ever you doubt what you've done or fear that I regret your having done it. Read it after you've started." They strained each other in embraces that seemed as ineffective as their words, and he kissed her face with quick hot breaths that were so unlike him that made her feel as if she had lost her old lover and found a stranger in his place. The stranger said, "What a gorgeous flower you are, with your red hair and your blue eyes that look black now, and your face with the color painted out by the white moonshine. Let me hold you under my chin to see whether I love blood, you tiger lily." Then he laughed Garrison's laugh, and released her, scared and giddy. Within her willfulness she had been frightened by a sense of subtler force in him, and mystically mastered as she had never been before. She ran all the way back to the house, and mounted the steps panting. Her mother and father were talking of the great affair. Her mother said, "Weren't Mr. Garrison in rather of an excited state of mind? Didn't you think he acted curious?" "Well, not for a man who'd just been elected captain and had to set him up for the whole of Company A," her father chuckled back. "What in the world do you mean, Mr. Balcom? Oh, there's Editha." She offered to follow the girl indoors. "Don't come, mother," Editha called, vanishing. Mrs. Balcom remained to reproach her husband. "I don't see much of anything to laugh at." "Well, it's catching. Caught it from Garrison. I guess it won't be much of a war, and I guess Garrison don't think so either. The other fellows will back down as soon as they see we mean it. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I'm going back to bed myself." Garrison came again next afternoon, looking pale and rather sick, but quite himself, even to his languid irony. "I guess I'd better tell you, Editha, that I consecrated myself to your god of battles last night by pouring too many libations to him down my own throat. But I'm all right now. One has to carry off the excitement somehow." "Promise me," she commanded, "that you'll never touch it again." "What? Not let the cannikin clink? Not let the soldier drink? Well, I promise." "You don't belong to yourself now. You don't even belong to me. You belong to your country, and you have a sacred charge to keep yourself strong and well for your country's sake. I have been thinking all night and all day long." "You look as if you had been crying a little too," he said with his queer smile. "That's all past. I've been thinking and worshipping you. Don't you suppose I know all that you've been through to come to this? I've followed you every step from your old theories and opinions." "Well, you've had a long row to hoe." "And I know you've done this from the highest motives." "Oh, there won't be much pettifogging to do till this cruel war is—" "And you haven't simply done it for my sake. I couldn't respect you if you had." "Well, then we'll say I haven't. A man that hasn't got his own respect intact wants the respect of all the other people he can corner. But we won't go into that. I'm in for the thing now, and we've got to face our future. My idea is that this isn't going to be a very protracted struggle. We shall just scare the enemy to death when it conies to a fight at all. But we must provide for contingencies, Editha. If anything happens to me—" "Oh, George!" She clung to him, sobbing. "I don't want you to feel foolishly bound to my memory. I should hate that, wherever I happen to be." "I am yours for time and eternity, time and eternity." She liked the words. They satisfied her famine for phrases. "Well, say eternity, that's all right. But time's another thing, and I'm talking about time. But there is something. My mother. If anything happens—" She winced, and he laughed. "You're not the bold soldier girl of yesterday." Then he sobered. "If anything happens, I want you to help my mother out. She won't like my doing this thing. She brought me up to think war a fool thing as well as a bad thing. My father was in the Civil War, all through it, lost his arm in it." She thrilled with the sense of the arm round her. What if that should be lost? He laughed as if divining her. "Oh, it doesn't run in the family, as far as I know." Then he added gravely, "He came home with misgivings about war, and they grew on him. I guess he and mother agreed between them that I was to be brought up in his final mind about it. But that was before my time. I only knew him from my mother's report of him and his opinions. I don't know whether they were hers first, but they were hers last. This will be a blow to her. I shall have to write and tell her." He stopped, and she asked, "Would you like me to write too, George?" "I don't believe that would do. No, I'll do the writing. She'll understand a little if I say that I thought the way to minimize it was to make war on the largest possible scale at once, that I felt I must have been helping on the war somehow if I hadn't helped keep it from coming, and I knew I hadn't. When it came, I had no right to stay out of it." Whether his sophistries satisfied him or not, they satisfied her. She clung to his breast and whispered with closed eyes and quivering lips, "Yes, yes, yes." "But if anything should happen, you might go to her and see what you could do for her. You know, it's rather far off. She can't leave her chair." "Oh, I'll go, if it's the ends of the earth. But nothing will happen. Nothing can. She felt herself lifted with his rising, and Gearson was saying, with his arms still round her, to her father, "Well, we're off at once, Mr. Balcom. We're to be formally accepted at the capital, and then bunched up with the rest somehow, and sent into camp somewhere, and got to the front as soon as possible. We all want to be in the van, of course. We're the first company to report to the governor. I came to tell Editha, but I hadn't got round to it." She saw him again for a moment at the capital, in the station, just before the train started southward with his regiment. He looked well, in his uniform, and very soldierly, but somehow girlish, too, with his clean-shaven face and slim figure. The manly eyes and the strong voice satisfied her, and his preoccupation with some unexpected details of duty flattered her. Other girls were weeping, but she felt a sort of noble distinction in the abstraction with which they parted. Only at the last moment he said, "Don't forget my mother. It mayn't be such a walk-over as I supposed," and he laughed at the notion. He waved his hand to her as the train moved off. She knew it among a score of hands that were waved to other girls from the platform of the car, for it held a letter which she knew was hers. Then he went inside the car to read it, doubtless, and she did not see him again. But she felt safe for him through the strength of what she called her love, what she called her God, always speaking the name in a deep voice, with the implication of a mutual understanding, would watch over him and keep him and bring him back to her. If with an empty sleeve, then he should have 3 arms instead of 2, for both of hers should be his for life. She did not see, though, why she should always be thinking of the arm his father had lost. There were not many letters from him, but they were such as she could have wished, and she put her whole strength into making hers such as she imagined he could have wished, glorifying and supporting him. She wrote to his mother, but the brief answer she got was merely to the effect that Mrs. Gearson was not well enough to write herself, and thanking her for her letter by the hand of someone who called herself, "Yours truly, Mrs. W. J. Andrews." Editha determined not to be hurt, but to write again, quite as if the answer had been all she expected. But before it seemed as if she could have written, there came news of the first skirmish, and in the list of the killed, which was telegraphed as a trifling loss on our side, was Gearson's name. There was a frantic time of trying to make out that it must be, some other Gearson. But the name and the company and the regiment and the state were too definitely given. Then there was a lapse into depths out of which it seemed as if she never could rise again. Then a lift into clouds far above all grief, black clouds that blotted out the sun, but where she soared with him, with George, George. She had the fever that she expected of herself, but she did not die in it. She was not even delirious, and it did not last long. When she was well enough to leave her bed, her one thought was of George's mother, of his strangely worded wish that she should go to her and see what she could do for her. In the exaltation of the duty laid upon her, it buoyed her up instead of burdening her. She rapidly recovered. Her father went with her on the long railroad journey from northern New York to western Iowa. He had business out at Davenport, and he said he could just as well go then as any other time, and he went with her to the little country town where George's mother lived in a little house on the edge of illimitable cornfields, under trees pushed to a top of the rolling prairie. George's father had settled there after the Civil War, as so many other old soldiers had done, but they were Eastern people, and Editha fancied touches of the East in the June rose overhanging the front door, and the garden with early summer flowers stretching from the gate of the paling fence. It was very low inside the house, and so dim with the closed blinds that they could scarcely see one another. Editha tall and black in her crapes, which filled the air with the smell of their dyes. Her father standing decorously apart, with his hat on his forearm, as at funerals. A woman rested in a deep armchair, and the woman who had let the strangers in stood behind the chair. The seated woman turned her head round and up, and asked the woman behind her chair, "Who did you say?" Editha, if she had done what she expected of herself, would have gone down on her knees at the feet of the seated figure and said, "I am George's Editha," for answer. But instead of her own voice, she heard that other woman's voice saying, "Well, I don't know as I did get the name just right. I guess I'll have to make a little more light in here." And she went and pushed two of the shutters ajar. Then Editha's father said in his public, "Will now address a few remarks" tone, "My name is Balcom, ma'am, Junius H. Balcom, of Balcom's Works, New York. My daughter—" "Oh!" the seated woman broke in, with a powerful voice, the voice that always surprised Editha from Gearson's slender frame. "Let me see you. Stand round where the light can strike on your face." And Editha dumbly obeyed. "So you're Editha Balcom." She sighed. "Yes," Editha said, more like a culprit than a comforter. "What did you come for?" Editha's face quivered, and her knees shook. "I came because George—" She could go no farther. "Yes," the mother said. "He told me he had asked you to come if he got killed. You didn't expect that, I suppose, when you sent him." "I would rather have died myself than done it," Editha said, with more truth in her deep voice than she ordinarily found in it. "I tried to leave him free." "Yes, that letter of yours that came back with his other things left him free." Editha saw now where George's irony came from. "It was not to be read before until I told him so," she faltered. "Of course he wouldn't read a letter of yours under the circumstances till he thought you wanted him to. Been sick?" the woman abruptly demanded. "Very sick," Editha said, with self-pity. "Daughter's life," her father interposed, "was almost despaired of at one time." Mrs. Gearson gave him no heed. "I suppose you would have been glad to die, such a brave person as you. I don't believe he was glad to die. He was always a timid boy that way. He was afraid of a good many things, but if he was afraid, he did what he made up his mind to. I suppose he made up his mind to go, but I knew what it cost him, by what it cost me when I heard of it. I had been through one war before. When you sent him, you didn't expect he would get killed." The voice seemed to compassionate Editha, and it was time. "No," she huskily murmured. "No, girls don't, women don't, when they give their men up to their country. They think they'll come marching back somehow, just as gay as they went, or if it's an empty sleeve or even an empty pantaloon, it's all the more glory, and they're so much the prouder of them. Poor things." The tears began to run down Editha's face. She had not wept till then, but it was now such a relief to be understood that the tears came. "No, you didn't expect him to get killed," Mrs. Garrison repeated, in a voice which was startling like George's again. "You just expected him to kill someone else, some of those foreigners that weren't there because they had any say about it, but because they had to be there, poor wretches, conscripts, or whatever they call them. You thought it would be all right for my George, your George, to kill the sons of those miserable mothers and the husbands of those girls that you would never see the faces of." The woman lifted her powerful voice in a psalm-like note. "I thank my God he didn't live to do it. I thank my God they killed him first, and that he ain't living with their blood on his hands." She dropped her eyes, which she had raised with her voice, and glared at Editha. "What you got that black on for?" She lifted herself by her powerful arms so high that her helpless body seemed to hang limp its full length. "Take it off! Take it off before I tear it from your back!" The lady who was passing the summer near Balcom's Works was sketching Editha's beauty, which lent itself wonderfully to the effects of a colorist. It had come to that confidence which is rather apt to grow between artist and sitter, and Editha had told her everything. "To think of your having such a tragedy in your life," the lady said. She added, "I suppose there are people who feel that way about war. But when you consider how much this war has done for the country, I can't understand such people for my part. And when you had come all the way out there to console her, got up out of a sick bed, well—" "I think," Editha said magnanimously, "she wasn't quite in her right mind, and so did Papa." "Yes," the lady said, looking at Editha's lips in nature, and then at her lips in art, and giving an empirical touch to them in the picture. "But how dreadful of her! How how vulgar!" A light broke upon Editha in the darkness, which she felt had been without a gleam of brightness for weeks and months. The mystery that had bewildered her was solved by the word, and from that moment she rose from grovelling in shame and self-pity and began to live again in the ideal. End of Editha by William Dean Howells.